Let's head over to Madagascar, where in a dramatic turn of events, soldiers from an elite army unit have joined thousands of anti-government demonstrators in the capital, Antananarivo. So the troops were cheered on by massive crowds and urged fellow security forces to refuse orders to fire on civilians. And this marks a significant shift in the nation's deepening political crisis. Protesters marched towards the iconic May 13 square, condemning recent police repression and calling for systemic change in governance. The colonel, Lucien Rabe Arimanana, of the Capsat Corps, publicly declared support for the people, appealing for calm and urging an end to the looting and the violence that you can see there on your screen. The rare military defection follows weeks of unrest triggered by economic hardship and allegations of corruption. Observers warn that this development could even further destabilize the island nation, as pressure is really mounting on President Andry Rajoelina's administration. And in a major step, U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Thursday that Israel and Hamas had agreed to the first phase of a peace deal aimed at ending the war in Gaza. So under this new plan, Hamas is expected to release at least 20 hostages, while Israel begins a limited troop withdrawal from parts of Gaza. Trump said that in this agreement, brokered with the help of Qatar and Egypt, that it marked a major step towards lasting peace. He also hinted at a possible visit to the Middle East, and both sides have exchanged prisoner lists, but verification and timing for future phases are still under discussion. And after months of fighting and failed talks, this development stands as the strongest sign yet of movement towards peace in the region. Still on President Donald Trump, where there must have been a little bit of disappointment for him when he didn't get this year's Nobel Peace Prize after all, with the 2025 prize being awarded to the Venezuelan opposition leader and democracy campaigner Maria Corina Machado. So the US president had last month told the UN General Assembly that everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize. The chairman of the Norwegian Nobel Committee in Oslo, Jorgen Friednes, said that Machado was honored for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela, and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy. So to discuss all of these topics, I'm now being joined by retired Nigerian diplomat, Ambassador Joe Keshi, for an overview of all of those developments on the international scene. Good afternoon, good evening, Ambassador.
Good evening from Abuja, and nice to be with you.
Yes, nice to be with you as well. So we'll start with the Madagascar story, because the scenes have become very violent. You know, we've seen that the military has now gotten involved, but these protests initially started over water shortages, electricity shortages in the country. And I think that it really just shows that the people there are tired of living under these conditions, and they've all taken to the streets to essentially protest that. So how are you seeing this story and the people deciding to speak up?
I think the introduction you made, virtually answers the question. The people are tired. They are disappointed. They are simply fed up with the government, and they decided to speak up. They decided to, protest. I think the government has an obligation to listen to them, and this is a problem with a number of African countries. And I've always asked people that anywhere coups take place in Africa today, will anybody actually be surprised? Because the African leaders, well over 90% of them are not listening to the people. They are not, carrying out policies that would change significantly the lives of the people. And this is where the problem is. A government's major priority, first is the security of the people, second is the welfare of the people. And where there are such shortages as water and other, things, necessary things of life, the people have the right to protest, and the government should just find a way, to accommodate the process and adequately, ensure that water is made available or plans are made to ensure that water is supplied to the people. What's interesting about some of this development is that some of the demands being made today, the demands did not start yesterday or the day the protest started. Mm-hmm. This has been long-time demands that the government did not pay attention to. And you find this same thing happening in a number of countries, particularly in this part of the world, where leaders virtually ignore citizens and continue with what they believe they want to do, and their agents are all over the place with propaganda saying that they are doing very well, they are taking care of the people. But somehow the people snapped, and this is exactly what's going on in Madagascar. And I sincerely hope that the government will find a better way out of this unfortunate situation.
Mm-hmm. And it's also interesting that these protests were led by young people. I think they've called them the Gen Z movement, and it's something we've also seen in Morocco, in Nepal, the Philippines. What do you think this says about this generation and I guess their ability to kind of speak up too and really being at the forefront of what they want to see in the country, young people especially? And what can we learn from that as well?
Look, the young people of today, they have the advantage of what the older generations do not have. But the truth of the matter is that they are standing on the shoulders of the older generation. Look, the generation of African leaders, for example, if you take Nigeria, for example, who fought for the independence of this country, were relatively young people, when you come to think of it. I mean, when we were in the university, we were young and we protested against a number of things, against military rule, and against a bad government and the rest of it. So young people, from generations have always protested. But today, the difference is that they can easily mobilize using social media, and they can rally around people very easily. Unlike in those days, for example, when we're in the university, we actually have to go from one hall to the other, pleading with people to come out and demonstrate against the government. Mm-hmm. But the point I want to make is that young people have always protested. They've always led protests. When you look at those who protested in the 60s and the 70s, when you look at those who fought for Nigerian independence, they were relatively young people. Mm-hmm. So kudos to today's young people are standing on the shoulders of those, who fought many years ago. Because look, everything that we're enjoying today, everything we have today that we're enjoying, whether in this country or anywhere else, mm-hmm. people fought for it. And when you look at those who fought for it, they were young people as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Let's now move to, the Israel and Hamas peace deal. And I think for this one, my question to you is, how much should people there actually be breathing a sigh of relief? I think that when we see the headline that this peace deal has been signed after, all this time, it's definitely a significant step. But for people there on the ground, how happy should they be with this development?
Oh, look, if you have gone through the hell that they have gone through and you are at this point, you certainly will be very happy. They are excited, they are happy, they are returning to their homes, even though they have no homes to return to. But they are at least, they are appreciative of the fact that they can have some peace to begin to reorganize their future. What the rest of us are holding our breath and hoping for the best, because the first phase of the peace agreement is probably the easiest phase of the agreement, the return of the hostages, the release of Palestinian prisoners, and the withdrawal of Israel to the border post or somewhere. Now, these are very easy part. This is a very easy part of the agreement. The real and the crucial test, it's coming. I'll probably start from Tuesday and thereafter. And I believe that if America is pragmatic enough, and America continues to lean on Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the Arab states, particularly the Gulf states, continue to hold firm Hamas and compel Hamas to make some accommodation. I'm confident that we are very close, very, very close to final peace in in Gaza, and this for me will end the horrific scenes that we have seen in the last 2 years, which the world could not address. But so far, so good. The people are returning. The Israelis are beginning to withdraw. So let's just hope for the best and pray for the best, because the people have actually suffered.
Absolutely. And then in terms of the rebuilding, though, like you said, the scenes that we've all been watching for the last, ever since October 7, have been catastrophic. But how does the rebuilding start, just of the environment where people lived, schools, hospitals? What does that look like?
Well, look, I think that, for the last 2 years, I think I have criticized the Arab states, vehemently about their attitude to this war. But I think that the next phase, we can depend on the Arab states and the Gulf states that are very rich and have enough resources to help the Palestinians to regain, to settle down, rebuild their city, and so on. And I also think that the international community is going to come to the aid of the Palestinians. So we can be hopeful, because the rebuilding of Gaza is part of it's an item on the peace agreement, the 21 or the 20-point peace agreement that President Trump announced. So I sincerely think that once we pass this phase and the provincial government or the board of peace is established, that's when they will begin to discuss the rebuilding of Gaza. But the most important point, is going to be the withdrawal of all Israeli troops and the surrendering of Hamas. If Hamas agrees, that's going to be very difficult. And one thing that we need to understand is that Hamas is not the only organization that is armed in the Gaza Strip. There are other smaller organizations that are armed. So getting the arms out of Hamas could be easier, but there are also other groups that they need to take care of. But the most important thing, as I said, is if the American government becomes an honest broker, if they are pragmatic, and if they are realistic enough to say, look, there's no way. I have been involved in trying to solve a problem like this, for example, in Sierra Leone. I can't guarantee you that we were able to get all the arms. No, we were not able to get all the arms on the rebels, for example, But if they at least can get substantial arms from Hamas, they should please continue to move with the peace process, which by item 20 or 21 could lead to possible discussion of a two-state solution, and that would bring eternal peace to the Middle East.
And, to kind of stay on that topic of the U.S. government, we have this news as well that President Trump did not get the Nobel Peace Prize. It's something that he'd spoken about for a while. I mean, how surprised should we be that he didn't get it? And why was it so important for him to get it in the first place?
To your second question first, the only reason that Donald Trump is so vehemently, in need of the Nobel Peace Prize is because Obama got it in his first term. And, and he has always said Obama did nothing to get the Peace Prize. No, Obama did not get it on the day he resumed office. Obama got the Peace Prize, I think, about 9 months or 10 months after he became president. But Donald Trump, because he's so obsessed with Obama, and he now feels that once he gets the Nobel Prize, he could have equaled. Look, everything Donald Trump is doing is just to diminish, his predecessors. And that's why you hear Donald Trump say things like, nobody has ever done it before. I'm the first to do this, and all that kind of thing you hear from President Trump. But look, the truth is this. If Donald Trump can, honestly, without even from now going forward, if he can humble himself, ensure that peace is restored in the Gaza Strip, and find a way to deal with Ukrainian war, the Russian-Ukrainian war, yes, he might be considered. Then the other thing, again, we need to put into consideration is the fact that among other things that are considered by the Nobel Peace Committee is character. Character, you know, the character for them means a lot. And the chairman said it a few days ago, that the priority is the character of the people they want to award the Peace Prize to. So Donald Trump can do everything he can to ensure peace in one or two places, but maybe he too has to do a little bit more to change his character one way or the other. And look, you cannot be making peace, for example, in the Middle East, and you are creating global trade crisis, and you are creating division at home in the United States of America. So it will be very difficult for the people to come to a conclusion about giving the Nobel Peace Prize to such a man. So it's up to Donald Trump if he wants to, if he's so desperate to win to equal Obama and get the Peace Prize. He just needs to do a few things. He can change his character between now and next year. He can negotiate peace in two other places. He can restore some normalcy in the United States, particularly on trade, human rights, democracy. You know, I think that maybe next year or 2 years from now, the Nobel Peace Committee might be enthused to consider, you know, Donald Trump. But look, let's be frank, what is going on in Gaza, even if you don't like Donald Trump, let's give him a little bit credit for what has happened.
Ambassador Joe Keshi, thank you very much for your time and your expertise on all of these topics.